One lovely day, Thomas the Tank Engine was puffing down his branch line with his faithful coaches Annie and Clarabelle. It was a splendid day. Thomas had many friends. Both engines and people. And today, Thomas is going to visit one of his people friends, Jake. Thomas loved taking the time of day to see him. It wasn't long before Thomas saw a smartly dressed young man waiting by the farm. That was Jake. So he slowed right down to a gentle stop. "Hello, Jake," said Thomas. "Hello, Thomas," said Jake. "It's a nice day today, isn't it?" "It certainly is," said Thomas. "I love days like this, don't you?" "I always enjoy a nice day," Jake said. "Speaking of which, what have you been doing today?" Thomas asked. "I've been at space today," Jake replied. Thomas looked at him funny. "So you went up in a rocket?" he asked. Jake laughed. "Sorry, Thomas, I wasn't very specific. I meant space inclusive." "And what's that?" Thomas asked. He had never heard of it before. "It's a day centre I go to," Jake told him. "As a result of having special needs, I go there. It's a really nice place too. They help many young adults with special needs such as myself to access the local community, and we do all sorts of fun activities and such." Thomas became very intrigued. Not only he had never heard of it before, but he had never heard of anything like it. "That sounds like great fun," Thomas said. "I may not have these special needs like you do, but I wouldn't mind trying it one day." "But Thomas, we can't go into buildings the same way people can," Annie said. "And we like our rails," added Clarabelle. "Never mind that for a moment now," said Jake. "We'd better hurry. What would the fat controller say if we were late?" So he climbed aboard Thomas, and with a whistle, Thomas was ready to set off again. Later, Percy was shunting some coaches into a siding after he had finished a passenger run. That was when Thomas came up, so he could put Annie and Clarabelle in the siding. Percy was very happy to see his friend. "Hello, Thomas," he said. "Hello, Percy," replied Thomas. "Did you get to see Jake today?" Percy asked. "I did," said Thomas. "He said he went somewhere called Space Inclusive." "Space what?" asked Percy. "Is that anything to do with outer space?" "No, it's not," said Thomas, "but I asked him the same thing. He said it's a day centre that can help young adults like him who have special needs access the local community and do some fun activities with them. I've never heard of anything like it. It sounds like fun too. I wish I could try it." "That might be tricky, Thomas," Percy said. "We can't go much of anywhere except for our rails." "It could be possible though," Thomas replied. "As Jake always says, when there's a will, there's a way." "Well," said Percy, "if there's a will and a way to get to the Space Inclusive, maybe I could try it too." And off Percy went to shunt some trucks. Before long, Thomas was telling every engine he could about Space Inclusive. But whenever he said he wanted to try it, they all had the same kind of answers. "It's a very nice thought, Thomas, but it's not at all practical." "Yes, how exactly do you propose to fit in the building without any rails?" "No, little Thomas. I think you need to keep your smoke box out of the clouds and back down here where it belongs." "Silly stick in the mud," Thomas would reply. and he kept right on thinking about the place despite what the others had said. Soon, the day's work had been completed, and the engines were all resting. But Thomas wasn't asleep. He was imagining what Space Inclusive might be like. I wonder what's there, he muttered to himself. I know it's not outer space, and there's no building I'd fit into, but I'll bet it's a great place over there. And he imagined all sorts of things before eventually going to sleep. The next day, Thomas was very quiet as he did his work. He was so quiet he barely said a word to anyone. The other engines began to wonder if he was even alright. Perhaps he's taken heed of my advice, Gordon said to James as he left the station. But Jake was so worried about Thomas being quiet, he went to see the Fat Controller about it. I don't know what's wrong with him, sir, Jake said. I've never known him so quiet. Yes, it's most peculiar of Thomas to be quiet, agreed the Fat Controller. But there is at least something we can do about that. Thomas has a routine maintenance check today on the main line. We'll be able to detect if anything is wrong with him. Out on the main line, said Jake. But Thomas hasn't been out on the main line in a long while. Do you think he'll be alright? Don't worry, Jake, assured the Fat Controller. I'm sure Thomas will be fine. But given he's been unusually quiet, I expect he'll feel even better if we both went with him. And that was what they did. With Jake and the Fat Controller in his cab, Thomas made his way comfortably to the steamworks for his maintenance check. Toby took care of Annie and Clarabelle for him while he was gone. There were many different engines out on the main line, but regardless of shape and size, they were all friendly to Thomas, and he said hello to him as he went by. A kindly engine even gave him directions when he looked lost. You go straight down, and it's the first shed on your left. Can you miss it, laddie? Thank you very much. At last, Thomas arrived at his destination safely, and he parked up in the siding where the men were waiting to inspect him. Right then, said the Chief Inspector kindly. Shall we get started? The work took time, but they had to make sure that everything was properly in order. They checked his wheels, the bolts that held his side rods, they checked his lamp irons, they checked his water tanks, his coal bunker, they checked him all over. Soon the work was completed, and the Chief Engineer was speaking to Jake and the Fat Controller. He had a very good report to give. That's a perfectly good little engine, he said. There's nothing wrong with him whatsoever. Completely fit for purpose. That's a relief then, the Fat Controller said. Jake has told me that Thomas has been very quiet lately, and it's not down to him being sick. Well, he's certainly not ill, the Chief Engineer said. As cheery as he seems, can I confirm that he hasn't been spoken to harshly lately or blamed for something that he hasn't done? Oh no, certainly not, Jake said. Nothing like that at all, Thomas said. I had just been thinking, that's all. Thinking? Jake said. What about? About Space Inclusive, Thomas said. It sounds like such fun from what you describe. I wish I could try and see what it's like, but the others reckon it's not very practical or something like that. Well, I'm going to be brutally honest, Thomas. Even if there was rails, there's no way we'd be able to fit you into a building. It's just a complete bungalow. But then, Jake had an idea. But, he said, there is a railway station near the place. So long as the Fat Controller agrees as well, I'll speak to the lady in charge of my site and see what we can do. Arrangements took time, but Jake kept to his word, and he told Lucy, who was in charge, and she spoke to the Fat Controller about ways Thomas could participate. And one day, on what was otherwise a perfectly ordinary working day, Thomas was in for a surprise. He was chuffing down the line with not only Annie and Clarabelle, but his friend's old slow coach as well. Jake told Thomas to meet him by the farm, and that's what he was going to do. It wasn't long before Thomas saw him with the Fat Controller and a lady he had never seen before. Thomas, Jake said, this is Lucy. She's in charge of our site at Space Inclusive. Hello, Lucy, Thomas said. It's very nice to meet you. It's very nice to meet you too, Thomas, Lucy said. Now then, Jake tells me you'd like to participate with Space Inclusive. Is that correct? That's right, Thomas said. But I don't know how I can without rails. You can't do it without rails, Thomas, said Lucy. But you can just as easily with rails. As there's a railway station near us, how would you feel about taking our clients for rides every now and then? I would love that, Thomas said. And as well as that, Jake said, we have things that need to be delivered to the building as well. You know, practical supplies and things like that. We thought if you deliver them, we can come and meet you at the station to pick them up. That would be grand, said Thomas. Just then, Percy came puffing up to say hello to Thomas. But he was surprised to see everyone else. Hello, Percy, said Thomas. This is Lucy. She's in charge of Space Inclusive, and she's found a way for us to participate. And what might that be? Percy asked. We can take the clients for rides and make deliveries. We? Said Lucy. Well, could Percy join in as well? Thomas asked. He is my best friend after all. Of course he can, Percy, said Lucy. We'll be very happy to have you. Percy beamed. Least of all, everyone is going to have a chance to join in, said the Fat Controller. You're much too busy to be doing it all by yourself, Thomas. And even with a rota in place, I shall get another engine to help you balance out your timetables more. Everyone was very happy. And before long, all the plans were in motion. The engines enjoyed taking the clients and staff of Space Inclusive for rides with them and making friends with them. Even Gordon enjoyed taking them in his express despite what he initially told Thomas. The engine's activities ranged from taking the clients and staff for rides, delivering supplies such as their post, they would even meet the clients at the farm and bring food for them to feed the animals. Percy and Toby in particular were very fond of this job. And Jake and the engines got to see plenty of each other, as Jake would even meet them even outside of space. Thomas and Percy would spend many nights talking about their days with the place. What fun it all is, Percy said. We can still be a part of it while we're even on our own rails. Yes indeed, agreed Thomas. I'm glad Jake spoke to Lucy so she could think of this for us. Isn't she kind? She is, Percy agreed. Although there is still something I wonder. And what's that? Asked Thomas. When the Fat Controller gets his new engine, I wonder what he is going to be like. Well, there's never any telling about that, said Thomas. And as for the Fat Controller's new engine, well, that is another story.